Chapter 8 of Bunyip Land. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mick. Bunyip Land by George Manville, Fenn. Chapter 8. How I ran from the Whitebird catchers. Yes, I may as well own to it. I was terribly frightened, but my first thoughts were as to what had become of my companions. Jack Penny and the doctor must have been seized at the same time as I. Jimmy might have managed to escape. Perhaps his black skin would make him be looked upon as a friend. But the old captain, what about him? He would return to the schooner with his men and be seized, and knocked on the head for certain. The fierce resistance he would make certainly would cause his death, and I shuddered at the thought. Then I began to think of my mother and father, how I should have failed in helping them, and I remember thinking what a good job it was that my mother would never know exactly what had happened to me. Better the long anxiety I thought of watching and waiting for my return than to know I had been killed like this. But I'm not killed yet, I thought as the blood flushed to my face. I'll have a run for it if I can. I had not much time given me to think, for I was dragged to my feet and out into a large open place where there were huts and trees, and there before me lay the sea with our schooner, but the other was gone, and as I recalled the fire of the previous night, I knew that she must have been burnt to the water's edge and then sunk. I began wondering about what must have been the fate of the other schooner's crew, and somehow it seemed that they deserved it. Then I began thinking of my own friends, and then, very selfishly, no doubt, about myself. But I had little time for thought, being hurried along and placed in the middle of a crowd of the savages, all of whom seemed to be rolling their eyes and looking at me as if enjoying my position. Well, I thought to myself, it is enough to scare anybody, but I'll try and let them see that I belong to a superior race, and will not show what I feel. My eyes kept wandering about eagerly, first to look where my companions were placed, but as I saw no sign of them, I began to hope that they might have escaped. Secondly, to see which would be the best course to take if I ran for my life, for I could run, and pretty swiftly, then. The hardy life I had led out in the bush, with Jimmy for my companion, had made me light of foot and tolerably enduring. But for some little time I saw not the slightest chance of escape. There were too many savages close about me, and they must have divined my ideas, for they kept a watchful eye upon every act. At first I had felt numb and cold. My legs and arms ached, and when the blacks took off the rope that they had bound about my limbs, every nerve seemed to throb and burn. But by degrees this passed off, and to my great joy I felt more myself. At last, after a great deal of incomprehensible chatter, it seemed that a decision had been come to about me, and a tall black arm with a war club came dancing up to me, swinging his weapon about, chattering wildly, and after a few feints he made a blow at my head. If that blow had taken effect, I should not have been able to tell this story, but I had been too much with my friend Jimmy not to be well upon the alert. We had often played together, he like a big boy a mimic fight, when she had pretended to spear me, and taught me how to catch the spear on a shield, and to avoid blows made with waddies. Jimmy's lessons were not thrown away. I could avoid a thrown spear, though helpless, like the black, against bullets, which he said came too much faster to top. And as the savage made the blow at me, I followed out Jimmy's tactics, threw myself forward, striking the wretch right in the chest with my head, driving him backward, and leaping over him, I ran for my life, making straight for the forest. "It's all because of those wretches in the other schooner yesterday," I thought, as I ran swiftly on with a pack of the enemy shouting in my rear. And though I could run very fast, I found, to my horror, that my pursuers were as swift of foot, and that though I was close upon the forest, it was all so open that they would be able to see me easily, and once caught, I knew now what was to be my fate. I began thinking of the hunted hare as I ran on, casting glances behind me from time to time, and seeing that though some of my pursuers lagged, there were 4 who were pretty close upon my heels, one of whom hurled his spear at me, which came whizzing past my ear so closely that it lightly touched my shoulder, making me leap forward as if struck by the weapon. I was panting heavily, and a choking sensation came upon me, but I raced on, since it was for life. How long the pursuit lasted I cannot tell, perhaps a minute. It seemed half an hour. Twice I leaped aside to avoid blows aimed at me, and each time ran blindly in a fresh direction, but all at once the idea occurred to me in a flash that in my unnerved, stupefied position I must have been going backward, and struck my head violently against a tree, for it seemed as if there was a violent shock like thunder with a flash of lightning to dazzle my eyes, and then there was nothing at all. End of chapter 8. Recording by Mick in Barcelona.